Hello, everyone. I'm Siren Jag. I'm a makeup enthusiast and a commentator on the drama end of the true crime community here on YouTube. I'm also a panel hopper. And I do part time music and comedy and anything else I like here on the platform. And tonight, this will be quite the departure from the heavy drama streams I was doing, but it is quite necessary. You see, there's been quite the little upheaval in the true crime drama pool, if you will. You see, the hearing happened between one Noodle Mash and one Mrs. Portland that I discussed ad nauseum. You know, everyone is familiar. You see, I tried and tried and tried and tried and tried to reorient Mrs. Portland, to bring her back to Earth, to get her to stop her lying, to get her to come to her senses, if you will, to stop so that she would have no legal action taken against her, to no avail, because she would not listen. She was too set to listening to people who hate Noodle Mash. And because she wanted to attack Noodle Mash too, legal action happened. And the temporary stalking order was put in place. You see, when you threaten someone, the court tends to frown on those actions. Can't physically threaten people, can't do it. When that happens, when you dox people, court takes a dim view of that. I explained that. I explained that. But because Mrs. Portland didn't want to listen to me, and the people she was listening to hate Noodle Mash, and Mrs. Portland hates Noodle Mash, she kept going and kept going. She didn't take it seriously. And they all just kept going. Well, the hearing was scheduled for November 8th. And as it turns out, one Miss Natasha Cooper, when all else failed and everyone else bailed, Miss Natasha Cooper decided that she would go all hands on with Mrs. Portland. You see, because of all the people who hate Noodle Mash, despite what Natasha Cooper says with her mouth about not giving a shit about noodle mash. Natasha Cooper hates noodle mash the most. You see, when Noodle Mash tried to make a clean departure from Natasha Cooper's community, she explained to Miss NC, or Coops, if you will, that she didn't want to be on eggshells, wondering when she would be attacked again for doing the wrong thing. That did not sit well. And then Noodle Mash made the mistake in NC's eyes of going into Whiskey OG's live stream, which was someplace that Natasha thought she had never been before and would never go, according to Tosh. May I call you Tosh? Well, I'm gonna. So, these transgressions could not stand, and they directly affected NC's pocketbook. When the supporters who were truly loyal to Noodle Mash, instead of NC, left with her. You see where this is going, because it's a song that's happened before. Natasha Cooper demands this choice often. If you're going to be in this chat, stay there. And then when they stay there, she gets pissed right the hell off. So, because of this transgression that directly affected Miss Cooper's bottom line, Miss Cooper decided she would get involved herself. Surely, if she became involved and just got the judge to see things her way, this order, even with an attorney involved on Noodle Mash's behalf, the judge would just throw this order out. And Mrs. Portland and all of her friends could just go right back to trashing her. Well, hearing day rolled around. And guess what happened? That order is now permanent. You see, way back about a year ago, give or take a month or two, Natasha Cooper collected over $20,000 for an anti-harassment fund to defend herself and anyone else against harassment online. At least that was her selling point. But then, As the money rolled in, the selling points changed. It turned into harassment of her and just me. And then the selling points became just her. Uh-oh. What happened, Miss Cooper? You see, here's a quick story on that. I came from, before I jumped into the true crime community, I came from Nick Recado's community. And he set up the fundraiser for the Vic Mignogna lawsuit. And it was set up through GoFundMe. And it was ironclad. When it was set up so that the money deposited directly into Vic Mignogna's attorney's IOLTA account, not to an individual. And that fund survived the assault from literally hundreds of attorneys who kept trying to take it down. And when Natasha Cooper tried to start this $20,000 fund, I explained to her that this fund needed to go to a GoFundMe so that it went directly to a law firm's IOLTA account. And she said, and I quote, "This fund is being done this way for a reason." And I left it at that. But fast forward to the moment when the monies weren't going to just Natasha Cooper. After the points were going to where the money was going to just Natasha Cooper. After that, the point of the money was changed so that it was going to start going to back up her false copyright strikes that she intended to file against anyone who used her content from her channels under fair use. Oh, that's not the point of that. Then that's why the fund was done through PayPal and not GoFundMe. Because if she had pulled that shit through GoFundMe has a clause that says she would have had to refund everyone. But since it was through PayPal, the only way people could get recourse would be if they filed a class action lawsuit. And because the people who are still there were loyal supporters, that wouldn't happen. And the people who had left weren't cohesive in any way. So no class action lawsuit ever happened. But let's fast forward to this Mrs. Portland event. This legal action popped up, and none of Mrs. Portland's friends took it seriously. They thought, oh, there's no way this will ever come to fruition. So she was dragged along by one Just Jess K, who said that her Carolina attorney would take a look at Mrs. Portland's paperwork and fill it out for her. Yeah, that didn't happen. She was promised help in chats by people like Hooker and Scotty and Just SK and Tits Up and Extinct Tube. That never happened. Anyway, so Natasha stepped in. But do you think any help came from this harassment fund? Because Mrs. Portland finally had to try to look for an attorney herself and found out that no attorney would help her without a $2,500 retainer. And boy, a harassment fund sure would help. Sure would help, wouldn't it, Miss Cooper? That's what that fund was for. It's what the people donated it for. Not only did Tosh not pony up the $2,500 so that Mrs. P had any kind of chance, she wouldn't even help her raise funds through any of this. And her reason why kept changing. Just admit you don't like her. Oh, she said things like, oh, if I help her, I'll have to help everybody with their fundraisers, or I'll be called a scammer if I help, or I'll be attacked if I help, and I'll be attacked if I don't help, so I'm just not going to help. I would think if I was going to be attacked no matter what I did, I would just do the right thing. But that's not the way Natasha Cooper thinks. So court rolled around, and Natasha Cooper decided that she would try to just win the judge over through her sheer force of will. Surely the judge would just see things her way. Even though Noodle Mash, who did a successful fundraiser, would have the help of an attorney. And let's be clear, Mrs. Portland was in the wrong. There was evidence there that Mrs. Portland committed coercion under Oregon law. I mean, there's real evidence. She threatened physical harm to Noodle Mash if Noodle Mash did not stop a course of action that was legally allowed to her. But anyway, court happened. Hey, kitty. And things did not go Natasha Cooper's way. Or Mrs. Portland's way. And Natasha Cooper was not happy. And she immediately went online. But it wasn't to state Mrs. Portland's case. Oh no. It wasn't to state Mrs. Portland's case at all. It was just to start attacking people. See, that's what's known as an ad hominem attack. That's when your case is so weak that it won't stand. So, in order to try to silence your opposition, you just start attacking them as people. See, she knew what Mrs. Portland did. But this was never, from the instant everything happened, this was never about Mrs. Portland at all. This was about Natasha Cooper using Mrs. Portland as a proxy. But we are going to talk about a little something that I posted and the aftermath. Let me share my screen. We know I am mechanically disinclined. This was posted to Mrs. Portland by me a little under 24 hours ago. You'll see that Mrs. Portland is no longer tagged, and we'll discuss why. Mrs. Portland, you need to re-examine your priorities. Throughout this entire process, I did nothing except try to keep you from having legal action brought against you, and you refused to listen. Even now that the law is against you, you continue to refuse to listen. And let me pause there, because in the process of Natasha raging as this was over, she was threatening an appeal, even though this is not the kind of thing that you appeal. Mrs. Portland isn't actually hurt by this. The only thing hurt is Natasha's pride. But let me continue. Your life is completely unaffected by this order, other than the fact that you can't contact Noodle Mash and continue your attacks. You needed to simply move on with your life. Instead, you chose to continue attacking whoever you could, myself included. Now that I know that this is included in your permanent order, do not address me again. If anyone with any kind of relationship with you attacks me as you did, I will consider it an attack on your behalf. This is how it has to be from this point forward, because you attack the people who actually look out for your best interests. And what's in this order, do you ask? Well, I'll show you. You see, in this stalking protective order, this is from Noodle Mash, by the way. This contact, by the way, that is not allowed under this stalking order, communicating with a third person who has some relationship to the other person. That would be me, by the way, who has some relationship to Noodle Mash, with the intent of affecting the third person's relationship with the other person. So if you attack me with the intent of cooling my friendship with Noodle Mash, that is not allowed. So Mrs. Portland can't do it. A friend of Mrs. Portland can't do it. An associate of Mrs. Portland can't do it on her behalf. And if it happens, I have every right to call the police and make the report. The police say, oh, this happened. They go to Mrs. Portland's house. Well, as you might expect, this post caused quite the hubbub. With exactly who you would expect. One Miss Natasha Cooper, who decided to attack me for 20 minutes today. Good job. That got you reported, by the way. Way to incite hate. Among things that she tried to claim, for one, she tried to claim that Mrs. Portland hasn't been online for 4 days since the hearing. And 4 days would actually be prior to the hearing. Well, newsflash, sport. Here's the slideshow. Let me get these slides to my favorite way of seeing them. This is a snippet of Lichen Legion's videos. This one on the right, over here, the one on the right is the one that he made immediately following the decision that was made in the hearing on Wednesday. And the one on the left is the stream from the next day, right after Natasha Cooper railed on all of us for the second straight day because she was still pissed off because she was wrong. Notice this photo? Notice this photo and this title, Natty Coops is angry, lol. Let me advance the screen. Next, here's Mrs. Portland. Hey, Mrs. Portland, how you been doing? Good job being away from your computer for 4 days. Hey, I wonder who's posting on your channel. When you're posting here saying, since when does Siren hold a law degree, you redacted? Because I'm not going to post what you put. What about your past redacted, redacted, redacted? Because I'm not going to post what you put. In your current pharmaceutical career, you have no room to talk, troublemaker, and notice the picture. Natty Coops is angry, lol, Lichen theory. Oh, that's Lichen's video that was on the left. Oh, look at the timestamp. That video lasted 3 hours, 25 minutes during that live stream. And she posted when it was 33 minutes into it, which means she was watching it. So, Natasha Cooper, if she was away from the computer for 4 days, how was she watching it? As a matter of fact, Ms. Cooper, while you're lying your ass off, there were also videos made by Lichen Legion where there was a string of community posts that Ms. Portland made where she posted whatever the hell she wanted, but then went back as she do and turned them into blank black photos, blank red photos, blank brown photos, because that's what she does to make it harder for everyone else to see when she knows she's posted some bullshit that could get her in trouble. But she's trying to save herself because she actually knows what she's doing. So, Ms. Cooper, you can miss me with your lies. It's not my fault that you lost. But, but, we're going to talk about something else regarding this. Let me share my screen again. This is the legal aid pamphlet that Mrs. Portland would have received about a stalking order that Natasha would have seen. In my post. Or let me back up just a moment. Sorry, I'm allowed. I'm going without notes here. In Natasha's 20-minute tirade that got her reported, she told her chat to mass clip my post and send it to the judge. That's cute, Natasha. Please, do you realize what you're telling them to do? You're telling them. You're telling them to send the judge evidence that Mrs. Portland has already violated her stalking order. But we're going to look at this stalking order pamphlet because Natasha tried to claim that me talking to Mrs. Portland violated the stalking order because I'm friends with Noodle Mash. So we're going to look at the pamphlet that Mrs. Portland would have received, or should actually have. So we're going to look at two things. In the second column, there's a question that says, can I violate my own protective order? Meaning, can Noodle Mash or a friend of Noodle Mash violate their own protective order? It says only the respondent can violate the order, meaning only Mrs. Portland or her representative. However, it's not a good idea to continue contacting the respondent because a judge is less likely to believe you're afraid of that person, and Noodle Mash has not contacted Mrs. Portland. Oh my. Are you saying that Natasha Cooper is lying to her audience again and firing bullshit? I mean, here it is. And just for grins and giggles, let's go up 2 questions. What if I need a reasonable accommodation or an interpreter? As Natasha is screaming or fuming, take your pick. The answer is if you have a disability and need an accommodation or have limited English proficiency and need an interpreter, notify the court clerk right away so the court can provide you with appropriate services as required by state and federal laws. And guess what? Neither Mrs. Portland nor Natasha Cooper did. They had the information that said they were supposed to do this. They had the information. The court cannot violate any rights of which they have no knowledge that they could have possibly known. I said that weird. Let's see. If they don't know of your need for appropriate accommodations, they cannot be held to blame for denying you those accommodations. There. I said that better. Way to go, Siren. Good job. So no civil rights were denied. Oh, wait. What's down here? If you cannot afford an attorney, your local legal aid office may be able to help you with your hearing free of charge. Did they even try? Did they even try? Or was Natasha Cooper just relying on the old force of will? But you see, Natasha Cooper read my post and she attacked me for 20 minutes knowing that she was violating Mrs. Portland's order. She knew. She knew that she was violating Mrs. Portland's order. She wants me to contact Mrs. Portland's sheriff and make that report because she wants someone to be a bigger bad guy than she is. And I most certainly would be a bad guy. But you see, just like every other time, I'm also smarter than Natasha Cooper. And I'll just use my proof to point out every time she's wrong, every time she lies. And the people who follow her might not care, but everyone else will. That's all I've got for tonight. Because, like I said, I've kind of had more important things to deal with during my day. I had to deal with listening to her bitch for 20 minutes while my daughter was in the emergency room having a CT scan. And my daughter's CT scan was negative. So she's just hurting, but she's okay. So, anyway, thank you all for watching. And I'll do something more fun for next time. So, see you later.